Alarming new details are emerging about Donald Trump's Air Force One bait and switch on a return flight from Turkey, where Trump used his own staff, as well as the journalists who cover him, as decoys, while he flew out on an unmarked plane due to threats from Iran. We are now learning more about who the staff members Trump used as decoys were and who was allowed to fly with him, making the cut for the secret flight. MS Now is reporting on the decoy flight leaving Turkey with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who helped to plan the operation. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent both knew that Trump was on a secret plane. Other White House staffers on the decoy plane included Stephen Miller, Stephen Chung, Mike Needham, Ross Worthington, Monica Crowley, and Will Scharf. By contrast, the staffers who joined Trump in his catering truck plane switch were relatively low-level aides. The Washington Post reports the passengers on the truck included Dan Scavino, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Natalie Harp, the President's Executive Assistant, and Walt Nauta, the Director of Oval Office Operations. Also on the smaller jet was Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who boarded the C-32A using external stairs in a manner that made him look like the senior-most official on the flight. Nauta may be most familiar as Donald Trump's Diet Coke valet, who was charged as Trump's co-conspirator in the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. Donald Trump was pressed about the ruse yesterday amid growing calls for a congressional investigation. Watch.
Why was it too dangerous for you to fly on Air Force One, but not too dangerous for the press?
I think actually the plane that I flew on was at greater risk.
Why do you say that?
Because that would be the plane I think that they would be more likely to go for.
Were you worried about a shoulder-fired missile?
I don't worry about anything, to be honest. Whatever it is, you know my attitude? Whatever.
President, were you surprised, Mr. President, that the Secret Service was telling you to take that third plane?
No, not surprised. I have a lot of threats. I have a lot of threats that you don't know about. Any consequential president has a lot of threats. Non-consequential presidents don't get threatened. And I think that I'm maybe the most consequential president.
The Trump administration continuing to stonewall after using staff and journalists as decoys is where we begin today. With senior investigative reporter Carol Leonnig, plus managing editor for The Bulwark, contributor Sam Stein. And we're also joined by a member of the House Intelligence Committee, Democratic Congressman Andre Carson of Indiana. Congressman, I want to start with you. When did you find out about the plane swap?
Well, I found out like everyone else. You know, look, this is a very concerning security threat. The administration made a decision to protect the president, as they should. DOD made a decision as well as Secret Service, and I commend them for it. I think this is just another reminder of really the broader costs of this war in Iran. You know, and first and foremost, as a member of the House Intel Committee, I'm deeply concerned over this reported threat. The idea that Iran could threaten to fire a missile at Air Force One after takeoff is very concerning for the president, very concerning for staffers, and certainly for the fourth estate, the press. I'm very relieved that this reported plot did not succeed, but I think the entire episode raises very serious questions about how the administration handled the threat and the risks it was willing to take with other Americans.
So, Congressman, to that point, what would you want to learn in a congressional inquiry?
Well, you know, look, protecting the president obviously is paramount in these kinds of situations. We also want to make sure when we use a ruse such as this one that passengers are still safe on other aircraft as well. And I trust the military to do so, as well as the Secret Service. I think that if the threat were dangerous enough for the president to be secretly moved to another aircraft, which was a wise decision, we still want to make sure that members of the press are protected as well. But at the very same time, we don't want to cause the kinds of concerns that would have reports leak that would alert our enemies or our adversaries during this kind of exchange, to make sure that the principal is protected, but also that the fourth estate and staffers are protected as well.
Carol Leonnig, when you are talking to folks, Secret Service, current, former, how usual or unusual do they say this were? Was protocol followed here?
I like the way you're asking the question, Alicia, but let me flip it a little bit and just say, when I first started to learn about this jaw-dropping reporting by my old news organization, the Washington Post, I was impressed by this, absolutely impressed by what they figured out. Kudos to them. And initially, I had concerns and questions about whether or not this threat was legit and how much certainty, essentially, or how much probability the Secret Service placed in this threat. But in the last several hours, as I've talked to more sources inside the government and also those who are conferring directly with the Secret Service, I'm learning that the probability of this threat was fairly high. And indeed, the Secret Service was willing to add a new risk, moving the president from the safest plane on the planet to a different one to avoid him being potentially targeted. However, I want to emphasize something that I think is important to share that is news to me, which is that these sources tell me the Secret Service concluded that everybody on what we are jokingly calling Old Air Force One was exceptionally safe. The cabinet members that were aboard, the press that were aboard, the fact that they weren't read into this, I have some questions about as well. But I'm told that of all the aircraft in the planet, this one was exceptionally safe. But the goal of the Secret Service in this setting was to shake up whether or not those planning to target the president had room and certainty to actually achieve their mission. This changed the trajectory a little in their view, enough that they would take the president off the safest plane in the world.
Congressman, you talked with sort of reverence earlier about the decision that the Secret Service and DOD made in the service of protecting the president. Do you really feel you have visibility into how they came to their decision and how it was executed?
I don't, but I can say as someone who has worked in counterterrorism, counterintelligence, I sit on the Intel Committee, and I've traveled on some of these aircraft. There is technology that is available that protects passengers. Again, the press was protected. The kinds of transparency that is critically important should not be overlooked. It should not be minimized. At the same time, there are very serious security risks and threats targeting not only our president, but members of Congress each and every day. And I think in order to avert many of these threats to the best of our ability, these kinds of tactics have to be employed, whether we like them or not, whether we have political agreements or not, ideological alignment or not. We have to be read in to a degree, but I think whenever you have tens of people read into a situation, you increase the risk for a leak to inevitably happen.
Sam, I want to just play you a little bit more of what we heard from the president in that press gaggle last night. Take a listen.
The country's doing well. Iran is going fine, going just absolutely fine. We totally control the Strait of Hormuz. We have control over it. Nobody else, only us. Our Navy is unbelievable, and things are going great for our country.
I mean, the only true statement there, Sam, is that the Navy is unbelievable. Everything else, Iran is not going great. The Strait of Hormuz is not going great. And nothing is, as the president described, being smuggled in a catering truck with your Diet Coke valet. Is that supposed to express confidence to the American people from an administration that purports to be the most transparent administration in American history?
Well, this is kind of the underlying thread that ties all this together, which is dishonesty. I mean, I couldn't agree more with the congressman or Carol. Like, obviously, it was a serious enough threat that president should have been moved, that a decoy flight was totally acceptable. The Secret Service made a determination. No one should begrudge the president for getting on the catering truck, as silly as that is, and going to this other military aircraft. You can even make the case that a bit of sort of deception was probably necessary in order to make sure that nothing leaked, as the congressman said. But there is a widespread lack of honesty and transparency and outright lying that is accompanying this administration throughout this. And Carol's too kind to say it because she's a good person. But when she initially reported that they had to switch from the Qatari jet to the Air Force One, which then Trump, bolted anyway, because of security threats, the White House was very public in saying that she was a liar. They did. They went out there and they said she's a liar. And it turns out she was right and they were wrong. And that's just the MO for this administration. And you saw with President Trump last night, where he's saying, we control the Strait of Hormuz. We do not. There's nothing going through the Strait of Hormuz. 8 ships when there used to be 130. Things in Iran are fine. They are not. We are, a couple of days before the 60-day target for the MOU when we're supposed to have a negotiated settlement. No one's acting like that's going to happen. Things are not going well, but they're asking you to believe that the sky is green, that 2 + 2 is 5, and that there was no security threat to Air Force One.
Congressman, in all of this, there's also just the reality that key figures did not know where the president of the United States was for a pretty extended period of time. I wonder, always, you don't hear from Republicans out on the streets, but you hear from them behind closed doors. Any of your colleagues have any concerns about the fact that the president of the United States, folks didn't know where he was for a few hours?
Well, that's always a concern. The nail was hit on the head just a few minutes ago. But look, this episode is another reminder of really the broader costs of the war with Iran. The threat against the president was very serious, without question. And 18 American service members have already been killed in this war. Honestly, American taxpayers have had to spend billions on the war and take a real hit to their wallets. The conflict has required very real sacrifices. And, I think the president should present a very real plan, a serious plan before Congress in order for this war to ultimately end.